this computer. All right, three, two, one. Harry Double A, it's my pleasure to see you eventually. I've heard a lot of things about you for one, and two, I've heard your voice a lot because Tim Benj, of course, he loves your sign in with you stuff.
Oh yeah, we've been working on that. But firstly, thank you for having me on. But yeah, like yourself, he definitely he plugged you quite well. He said that your energy and the way that you were able to sort of get a few things across in the way that you were teaching and whatever else was really cool. So I had a target. I had to work really hard to get energy levels up.
Now that I'm hearing this, I realize Tim's just been playing us off each other. I see what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's going like, this guy's really good, by the way. What do you think?
Yeah.
Pretty good. You think you can do better? Well, let's see.
Yeah. You got to work towards it, mate.
Funny, man. So, Harry, lots of fun stuff. What do you prefer? I know your Insta is Aitken. Do you go by Harry? Do you go by Aitken? Is that just an easier handle?
So, yeah, it's just the easier handle. Obviously, Aikines-Aryeetey is my actual surname. People call me Harry Double A. Harry is obviously my first name. Harry's fine. Harry Double A, just whichever flows off the tongue for most people.
Yeah,
So,
Harry Double A is a good one because it sounds like you could be a grime MC too. You know it gives you diversity. Yeah. You just branch off.
Come in like double.
So, Harry, if people aren't aware of you, of course, you've got a hell of a career at the moment as a GB sprinter. So, yeah, this was going to be a big year, I imagine. 2020.
Yeah, Olympics. Yeah.
What's going on with that? When is that scheduled for?
So it's been put back a year. Okay. Obviously, it's not cancelled, which I think is still an amazing thing because obviously when you think about it, had it been cancelled, that's when the upset would have sort of set in because obviously when you're training for something for a period of time and you're looking forward to it, but the fact that it's just been pushed on a year, given the certain circumstances with the virus, I think it's taken everyone's health and safety into the correct measures. I mean, as an athlete, it's my job. So obviously before we went into some form of serious lockdown, we were still trying to train in certain, places and not adhering too much to the social distancing because we still had to train at a certain level. But once, the Olympics was sort of postponed, it allowed us to sort of adhere to the ongoing rules and trying to be the best sort of servants of the public that we could be, as well as still sort of ticking over. Because at the end of the day, nothing's lost. Anything that you've been doing up until this point, nothing necessarily will just disappear. It's just more so the fact that you can appreciate you've got some things to work on now. So it's just planning correctly and it's just put back a year. Whereas if it was cancelled, then there would be a lot of upset.
Absolutely. And from what you're saying, it sounds like in a similar way, like when someone gets ready for a fight, there's still a lot of skills that you're learning as well as the training. So maybe the cardio, you don't have to make weight per se because the match is cancelled, match is postponed, but you still put in the time. How has it changed your schedule of what your training was?
Straight away, we're still trying to keep the same format. So obviously I would normally have like my acceleration or sprints on a Monday. I would then obviously go on and do some form of speed endurance on a Tuesday. And then once the Tuesday's sort of done, gym, a yoga sort of recovery day on a Thursday. I'm terrible. Something like that. And then from that, we'd run again on the Friday and gym on Saturday. So we're still keeping that same sort of format. It's just obviously what's lacking is the intensity without having, running on the track, without being with our training partners and all of those sort of things. That's what's made it difficult because obviously what we would have liked is to still be training on tracks, whereas now instead of running out of blocks and focusing on my acceleration pattern, I'm just doing hill training. So just having to make slight differences from there going around as opposed to keeping this sort of quality as you would like. So that's the difference.
All right. And I found it interesting there where you said your training partner. Now, I imagine in my head, like sprinting is a very individualistic race. So how does the partner work come into it?
When you're part of a group, so in my group specializes in sprints and hurdles. So when it comes to some endurance sessions or even just being in a competitive environment, so when you're training with people, don't get me wrong, some people can train by themselves, some people prefer to train in groups, but when you train with someone of a similar speed or even faster than you, or someone who's better at something that you're not. So for me, my speed endurance in regards to in the full training, so when we train in around October, November, we're doing a lot of slower, longer work, I'm asthmatic, so 10-200s with 2 minutes in between, running at about 28-second pace, that kills me off. So when I'm in a group environment, that will push me along and I'll get more out of myself. Whereas when you run by yourself, it's a little bit harder to push yourself in a certain sense, because you're more aware of certain aspects. So when you're training in a group environment, it's sort of, it can be quite rewarding because it can help you level up.
I get you. So that idea of like group learning, skill sharing is what I sometimes hear.
Skill sharing, as well as obviously from a motivational perspective, there's a skill sharing aspect in regards to, you could be doing a technical session with someone and doing blocks and learning some form of technique, but actually it's just more so in an environment where you're being pushed, because it's a competitive environment, which then obviously translates into the actual event. Because if you're, if we're doing flat out sprints and we're running 120s, 150s, or doing blocks, it gives you that mental competitive mindset. So then when you do go to compete, you're not too far away from where you've been, because you've had that sort of fluency in training. Whereas if you're sort of running by yourself, the first time you go to compete, it's something you have to get used to, because you haven't been in a competitive environment, or you haven't stood next to someone. So that's obviously some form of, some anomaly that you might not be used to as of yet. So you need to get yourself used to it. So, I mean, you can train with people. You don't have to train with people, but I find that when you do have a training group, people to help spur you on, people to obviously be around, warm up with, all these sort of things, it does add to value to your training sessions.
I totally get it. So it sounds like you're also trying to reduce the amount of variables. When it comes to race day, the variables are limited. And that's the same with any skill, anything. That when you have known variables, much easier to deal with than unknown one, because you want your brain in the race, I guess. But I found it interesting too. Go on.
Yeah, no, literally, as you just said it, less variables, the better. If you can, your body basically goes on autopilot. So if you can, make your subconscious aware of everything possible and deal with all manner of factors before you step on the start line of that important race, then, you're putting yourself in the best place possible. Obviously, that's the reason why you'll have multiple races in a season, because you will use them races to get ready and prepare yourself, and use them as some form of training as well. For those people that do train by themselves or may not have a direct training partner in regards to their event, that's what they use races for.
So how much of the training then becomes mental? So it sounds like you've got like a pretty good setup for the week in terms of different variety of physical training. Is there a mental aspect to the training? Is there a sports psychologist you guys see? Is there someone you work with for anxiety or performance kind of anxiety that can sometimes happen?
Yeah, I mean, for something, again, like, we're all very unique and we all come in different shapes and sizes, as well as mental capacity and what makes us tick to an extent. I've never needed to spend as much time with a sports psychologist as others. Our relay team, I've been working very closely with a sports psychiatrist. She's Jennifer Savage. She's done like wonders with us in regards to helping us understand one another and obviously have a group identity, which is obviously from 2016, 2017 has led us on to become world champions, Commonwealth champions, European champions in the relays. So obviously things like that can work. But from a training perspective, I would say the motivational aspect can be can coincide with the mental capacity in the sense of what drives you, because you just got to be ready for training. You got to understand how to push yourself, but also you need to be smart enough to not kill yourself, because you need to train smart. You need to listen to your body. You need to be aware of some limitations and what feels good and what doesn't feel good. You don't want to injure yourself. So it's all good and well trying to turn up like Rocky Balboa to every session and trying to kill yourself every session, but that doesn't necessarily help you. And at the same time, if there's target times that you have to run in certain sessions, if you've got 4 300s to run, or 4 250s to run, it might be all good and well running the first two too fast, but then you'll pay for that later on in the session, and you might pay for it later on in the week. So there's having some form of resilience and understanding of your body, but then at the same time, there's still an element of being smart. So when you asked a question about the mental capacity and dealing with anxiety and stress, I feel like that's more so in regards to competition, when you're actually stepping on the line, because again, you're not always in that environment, and it is such a stressful, I wouldn't say it's a stressful situation, but it's a stressor of a situation. It's something that, dealing with it when you're looking at where you could be if it's an Olympic final, or if it's a European final, or a Diamond League, and you're competing in front of 20,000, 50,000, 60,000 people, and then all of a sudden you've only got 10 seconds to prove your worth. That's where a lot of things can become dealing with the mental side of things, and having to relax yourself and having to prepare yourself in the best way possible.
So that's an interesting point I wanted to bring up with you. One, you said about training smart. I spoke to Tim Benj last week, similar interview, right? And he was saying how the coaches back then, there wasn't quite that understanding. It's, if you want to be the best, you need to show up every day and show you're the best by showing how hard you can push it, and that you wanted it more than the other guy by running till you puked. And of course, that makes it a harder thing to keep up. That's a much harder, training schedule to keep if you're vomiting every session. It's probably not ideal nutritionally wise either. So it's interesting to see how it's moved on, and that we've got to be smarter. And it's funny, for me, yoga has that combination of things, whereas what you're doing is you're pushing, but also listening. So you're telling your body stuff, and you're trying to find your new edge, but also listening to go, okay, there's got to be this reciprocal relationship with your own body, where it's not just always on dictator mode. You're also listening sometimes to it. And I think that's the important thing, to find those two, But talking about your anxiety, I know that you said that Maurice Green is one of your, inspirations in running. And you said an interesting thing. You said the way he walked around the track, like he owned it. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that mentality when it comes to certain high pressure environments. Like you said, it's a stressor, not necessarily a stress that's a bad thing, but it does things to different personalities. For some personalities, it'll bring you up, and other personalities, it tends to make them wilt. Like it makes them want to hide away. You strike me as the former, that when the pressure's on, you're like, now it's my time. And it's so funny, in my film world, working with a lot of performers, ex-athletes, but people that were in front of screen, you see the same dynamic. Different personalities, when the camera's on them, they go up another level, where some people dull it down, which is interesting to see the different types,
Yeah, I mean, I'm a show off. I'm definitely a show off. If there is a camera on me, then I'll lift the PB, or I try and run a little bit faster. It's a good motivational tool for myself. And this is something that a lot of people, or athletes, or individuals, just in any environment, can use to their example, to help them. Just understand yourself. Nothing you are is bad, and accepting it. Some people would sit there and say that, just because you're a show off, or just because the camera's in your face, is a bad thing. No, that just enables me to understand what helps me be the best me possible. And if it's something that I need to learn to do without the format of a camera, or having people around to show off to, I need to try and recreate that sort of level of intensity by myself. Mm-hmm. But again, that starts with understanding how you process things and who you are ultimately. But yeah, I kind of see pressure as a positive thing, because it means that you care, or there's some form of attention around it. It means that what you're doing is important. It means that what you're doing matters. The moment that you kind of feel something that matters can go to waste, you're going to do everything in your power not to allow that to be the case. You're going to live up to the moment. So when people would ask me about pressure and how I deal with it, I embrace it, because I'm excited to get out there and compete. We don't get to do it very often. I mean, I wish I was a footballer and had 90 minutes on the pitch, but I've literally got 10 seconds, So you've got to be excited about the majority of things. Sometimes it is hard to always be that ready and positive, because doubt kills. You have moments of doubt, and we all do. But it's just being aware of that and identifying it and say, hang on, no, I'm good enough. and being your biggest fan. That's ultimately it. When you look at people like Maurice Green, he didn't need anyone else to tell him that he was good enough on the day. He might have needed it 99% of the time, but on the day when he raced, that was it. He was in the zone. He knew he was good enough, and he knew that he was going to do the best that he could do. And that's something that I respect in athletes. The same with Usain Bolt. You know, you're looking at athletes that transcended sports. Muhammad Ali. I think that what he said was, you know, confidence wasn't cockiness. It's just, you know, if you can back it up, you know, you're good to go. And it's just about being in that place where you know what you're capable of, and you're just trying to do what you can do. And ultimately, that's what sport is. That's what I think life is. If you can be the best version of yourself, you know, if it means it's only a silver medal at the Olympics, at least you know you were top 2 in the world at some point. If it's breaking the world record, then you know you knew you're the best of all time. But it's just being the best you in any format possible that you can you put out there.
I thought that was so interesting what you said about that understanding of yourself. In yoga, there's this line of understanding of dharma and karma, and dharma is your path in life. For Marcus Aurelius, it was fate, and the idea was that your life is you're designed in a certain way to go in a certain direction in life, and you best embrace it, as you're saying. As long as you understand it, you can work with it. So that person that maybe gets performance anxiety needs to take away from thinking about all those people in the stands and just think about that line straight in front of them. Whereas for you, it sounds like you take that energy of everyone watching and go, oh, this is on me. I'm going to show you guys what's up. So it sounds like those kind of things come up in even more of an abstract world than just sport. And what you're saying about being the best version of you is exactly what Dharma is all about. That understanding of, this is who I am. This is the path that I've been set. You don't get to just chill out and just go along with that. It's up to you. Marcus Aurelius said famously, fate is the chariot that is pulling us along, and we're just dogs tied to the back of it. But you can still choose whether you want to run or you want to get dragged. So you have that path. You decide how best you want it, and you can make the best of it for sure, whatever that is. So it's interesting to see that you've got this higher understanding of what you're doing, past the fact you're just running. You know, you've seen it as something else, which is important, right? Otherwise, why would people do it? You know, you've seen it as a challenge of to be something.
Yeah, I mean, life is also something to be lived. I think is one of those things that you have to enjoy. So if you're adding any form of stress and making anything that you enjoy a chore, it becomes something that is upsetting, because there's a sort of passion behind everything that we choose to do. So to see that dwindle and disappear, that's actually, you know, quite upsetting. So, you know, you've got to always find ways or find reasons as to keep things exciting. But also, if there's ever a stage where you find yourself in a position where you're not looking forward to doing what you do, or not looking forward to any form of your lifestyle, you take a step back and ask the question as to why, and what's happening as to what's causing you to dislike this concept so much, that something you might have started so happily. And a lot of that might be to do with the gym, whether it be your track, whether it be your job. You know, you just got to take a step back and think, I used to like this and now I don't, and why is that? So understanding things about yourself enable you to move forward with certain problems that you might come across later on. So, you know, when you talk about fate, I'm a strong believer in, you know, certain powers that be. I'm a Christian myself. So, you know, I do believe that there's, you know, things looking out for us, and we just have to sort of allow opportunities or, you know, mishaps, understand that they happen for a reason sometimes, and you just got to roll with it. And there's enough success for everyone to go around. So you're allowed multiple successes at multiple times. Just everyone's entitled success.
Yeah, I think sometimes there's this misnomer that wealth, health, success are all limited resources, and people think that me getting some is going to take away from you, and that changes people's mindset, right? They stop being happy about your successes because they thinking, well, what's going to be left for me? You know, and that can be a very toxic environment, and it can be very hard. I imagine for someone like you, who's been very successful. I mean, have you come across kind of, as the cliche goes, haters of people like maybe
Yeah,
not being a fan, and it feels like it's maybe not just that.
yeah, you do come across certain people that you used to see, back you a lot, and then all of a sudden they stop sort of backing you, and I wouldn't say you see haters per se. It's more upsetting when they're close friends that don't sort of not take as much interest, but are not part of that winning circle ethos. And you can only surround yourself with. I like to surround myself with positive entities. So it sort of does come across in that sense. If someone does drop out of that, you notice it very slowly, but it's just how things are, and you can't force that person to be positive. You can't. They're going through their own thing, and they need to come out of it differently or go through that process. But as for your trolls or your internet haters, as you might say, for me, I get a lot of people, questioning my physique. And this is how God built me, and this is what, this is God given. So this is my natural talent and strength. So what do you want me to do about that?
Man, well,
I can do about it. So yeah.
There's a nice juncture there between two things you said, which was, things come up and things happen, maybe that are struggles and hiccups on the way. You're no stranger to some injuries. I mean, you've had some pretty decent injuries in your time.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about those, how this came up, and how those changed maybe your training habits, or what you did for the rehab, how you kept yourself fresh and positive, because it's easy to be positive when things are going well. It's a little bit harder, of course, when things are not.
Yeah, I mean, when I was fairly young, so I'd won the World Youth Championships, and I'd done the double. I was BBC Young Sports Personality of the Year, and then I had an issue with my back. I still went on to win the World Juniors. And then the following year, when I was about 18, 19, I had a double pars stress fracture in my back, L3. So that put me out for the whole year, and I was in a back brace. And then from there, I had a lot of sort of issues. I mean, I spent the year out, and then the following year, I still made the Olympic team in 2008 as I was 19. And I went on to run fast, and everything else continued. But the problem with that was that the double pars would never heal. So I'd often have some hamstring tears, because obviously the way that we are running, and obviously the way that your back is mainly connected to a lot of things. I took on Pilates as a form of control, to just help control my core, and understanding like how to, if anything, take control of my back a bit more. But I'd always have issues, so I do a lot of acupuncture just in maintenance of it. My back can go into spasm at random points, or if I'm overloaded, or if I'm working too hard. That's been sort of the main one throughout my whole career, because obviously I was quite young when I had it. I'm 31 now, so I still have to be wary of it and be mindful of it. But I do feel better now than I did when I was sort of like 21, 20. Again, because of the work that I've sort of put into it. I've had other issues, but I did go on to get another stress fracture. So I actually have 3 stress fractures in my back from when I was in 2013. But yeah, so they're all there, and it's just, they never heal. It's just something that I have to be mindful of, and be smart about.
It's like a managing as opposed to a curing. I think that's
maintenance is key.
This Pilates is such a good thing for that, managing the core, and like you said, that understanding of the body, that proprioception of the body, and how we do things, because we get into habits so easily, right? And being mindful of how we move, and maybe having to take a step back and relearning that can sometimes be so good. Back to your physique. I mean, Harry, you're a unit, is the easiest way to say it. I think other people would say dench. It's just, there's a lot going on there, man. So when you were growing up, like as a teenager, was there a big change, or you always kind of roughly this shape and things just got bigger? Or was there like a moment where you started weight training and you were like, oh my God, this works great for me?
Well, I didn't actually start weight training until I was about 20. By this point, the physique was already there. If anything, when I was about 13, 14, when I was 13, there was no real signature that I was going to be massively dense, as you would say.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess puberty hit, and I was doing athletics training at the time. And then by the time I was 14, I had pecs. So I was
Mad.
just sort of like, okay. But again, it's all dynamic tissue. It's all dynamic muscle. It's not dead weight by that point. So then the type of training, like when someone refers to someone as being athletic, the type of training that we do is a full body exercise. It does actually train every part of you. So by the time I was 19, 20, I was, in very, very good shape for, a normal human being, I guess. The type of weight training that we do is just, again, directly about running fast. It's not about bodybuilding to any extent.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm doing power cleans as opposed to, any form of dumbbell muscle, just, I've never trained my biceps, put it that way. I've never gone to aesthetics over power. It's all about power and strength development. So, I'll do my front squats, I'll do my back squats on some occasions. Obviously leg press, a lot of things will be superset with some form of dynamic motion, whether it be box jumps. Also, we like to do a lot of conditioning as opposed to any form of muscle building, again, because throughout the season, your body has to last. We only really get about 6 weeks off a year in regards to our break and maybe the odd day or two here. So if you start training in October and then you start racing for the outdoor season in May, you're still training, but you've also got to run your fastest race in July or August. It's a long time to sort of maintain any form of, volume and quality. So you have to be conditioned well enough to, maintain and sustain throughout the whole season.
No, for sure. And I imagine weight training, this idea of having DOMs of any description is not going to lend itself well to then also doing performance skill stuff, There's a guy that, I don't know if you watch UFC at all, but he was the coach for GSP for the longest time. His name is Faris Zahabi, trains a lot of guys. And his whole thing was, back in the day when people were training people and beasting them to make them big, he was like, what for? I don't need this guy to be able to do bench press on Monday and not again to be able to do anything on his chest till Thursday. I need this guy to be able to do a bit of training, conditioning, and the jiu-jitsu and the striking on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, maybe even a bit on Saturday, maybe rest Sunday. But I can't have him incapacitated by pushing heavy weight. And like you said, power cleans, a big explosive move, makes more sense because you're trying to fast twitch muscle, I imagine, is what you're trying to drive there.
Yeah. Those first 3 steps, obviously that's recreating the block start, jumping out of blocks, and having that dynamic strength is a big plug for our sprinters. Even some distance athletes are in the gym more than you would think, but it's one of those things that, like you said, it's being smart. Everything has to involve some form of plan. And like you said, just being big for big's sake doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get what you want. We've all heard of David and Goliath, but it just depends how you fall. And at the same time, a lot of people have told me to try and lose muscle mass, but that's one of my strengths. So why would I disown one of my strengths to then, have to work on other aspects that don't necessarily help me? Is a positive, and it's just something you have to work with.
And this is coming back to what you're saying about every person being the best version of what they are. Like, this is your skill set, work with it as opposed to try go and deviate and run someone else's race.
Exactly.
Speaking of different trainings, weirdly, I found a video of you with Tim Merrick, the bodyweight warrior. Man, and actually that is at a gym. I know what gym that is straight away. That's in Wandsworth. That's my friend owns that. Above the Planet Organic. Simon Stratton used to be an actor. So I recognized the place straight away and I was like, shit. And then obviously Tim is he's so good. His YouTube channel, I think, is really good. But damn, I mean, the muscles up, fucking well impressive. The crow stuff, also pretty impressive for your size. And then handstand stuff, I imagine that's not a skill you need to know anytime soon. So you'll be forgiven for not getting that straight away.
I mean, it goes overhead for us pretty much. So to try and hold my upper body in that capacity, I was just like, this is going to be a struggle.
Good on you for doing it though. But what I did find surprising is afterwards you were doing some straddle stretching with him. And I don't know why. I always just assumed sprinters would be super flexible, but that's not the case, right? And it kind of makes sense because you guys don't go into full range of motion. You're often in a smaller range of motion, right? You're not extending fully, or there's a very limited range of motion you have to work very hard at. But you don't necessarily have to be super flexible, which, as I was watching it, made me think.
It's elastic strength that you want. It's the elasticity of your tendons and your muscles that obviously allow you to strike the track and be reactive as you would like. So you don't want to be hyper dynamic or hyper flexible, which would in turn obviously cause some form of, I don't know, delay through the tissue and responsiveness. I could probably do with being a bit more mobile through certain aspects, but like I said, where we're all sort of built in different ways, there's some athletes that can fold in half, whereas there's some that can barely touch their toes, and they might all get to the line the same way, and then that's where it is up to you to try and figure out how best for you to make yourself the better version of yourself. For me, I've got quite tight, I've got like hip impingements, so in regards to my actual tissue itself, hamstring length is actually okay. But my hip joint, where I've got an impingement on my hip, doesn't allow me to, go into certain positions with such ease. Yeah.
But it's so interesting that you say, like, it's that what you need is that ballistic strength. It's that quick fire out. And you're right, like being loose is not necessarily. It's funny, there's some martial artists that are the same. Like you see them kick, and you're like super high kick. But then to actually static stretch, really difficult, and you realize the body's incredible. It can do things in different ways. You just have to find your path, to be able to do it, which sounds like it's far more likely with you. I saw those box jumps you've been doing, but you do like a straight leg, almost box jump, almost from the calves, which is monstrously high.
It's just a different way of explosivity. Obviously with a box jump, the majority of work is actually done from the floor, and then it's just dependent on how much of a I don't know, squat position you can get into. If you've got very, very loose mobile hips, then you're able to tuck much more than someone else, which I wouldn't regard as being how high you can jump versus the amount of explosivity that you're creating. So in a sense, it's an easier way to see a progression pathway, because if you were to stretch and become more flexible over a period of time, you can get onto a higher box. But does that mean that your explosivity and dynamic strength has improved? Maybe not.
No, so right. One is saying, how high can I jump? The other one's saying, how deep can I land? Because I know I've got a similar, I've got two deformities in my hips on both sides. So like my deep squat isn't there. So I see that kind of stuff. And I'm like, if I could land in full squat, I could do that. But I have to jump a little bit higher just to land it. So that is an interesting point to see you do it. Just to go back, just to the start of the story, Harry, obviously you are very much I think we both agree, quite at the pinnacle of your career now. How did it start? How did you even think that this was the thing for you? Was it always on the cards? Were you always running going, I'm fast?
Yeah, like I used to race with my dad on the balcony where we used to live on an estate, and there was like straight rows. So whenever we'd come home from some sort of event, I'd ask him and say, can we race? And he'd let me race. And I think the first time I beat him, I must have been about 8 or 7 or something. And I think back to myself then, like he wouldn't race me again after the first time I beat him. I think that might have been, I didn't think I was too young by that point. But I mentioned it to my friends the other day, and when you think about it, an 8-year-old shouldn't be beating an adult. That's when I knew I was quick. And then obviously you go through primary school, I was like one of the quickest in my class. By like year 4, so I still had another 2 more years in the school, I was the fastest in the school by that point. It was only the direction came in regards to where to go with it was I got chased by a dog playing a game of British Bulldog. So I'm playing this game of British Bulldog. This dog's come along, being from a household where there were no dogs. I looked at it and ran. Typical horror story mode. I was looking back. I ended up falling over. The dog just wanted to sniff me. But in that moment in time, a coach was walking past from the local track, and he said, "Look, you're rapid, mate. You need to get to Sutton Arena." And from that perspective, I did. I went and found myself a coach. Leslie Alder told me who to go to. and I joined a hurdles group again. So that's sort of where it gave me some direction, and I had some form of organization behind my training, where I was training twice a week, Tuesday, Thursday, and then competing maybe on the Saturday once the season started. And then that took me, I started when I was about, I feel like 13-ish, 13, 14, like I mentioned. That sort of summer, that sort of winter I trained. And then from there, yeah, just picked up. It was only the good thing about athletics is obviously where it's a big sport in the sense that there's other events, you're training with different genders and you're with your friends. You're not realizing that you're training. You're actually learning more about yourself, things that you like, you're laughing, and then you compete. It's only that later on you realize that, like I said, you trained quite aggressively for a certain period in time, and then later on you realize how much it's helped you to become who you are, but you're just having fun in that time.
I mean, I can now starting to piece together this idea you're saying about that disbelief in power above looking after you. I mean, that's a pretty chance encounter to get you into. That's crazy. That's pretty incredible, you know?
Yeah. And it's more so the direction of, because obviously I knew that I was fast, but like you said, where there's divine intervention, you know, someone might say, okay, he needs to go here. And the funny thing is, again, that coach that I, you know, was with up until I was about 15, he passed away, unfortunately. But even on his deathbed, he was telling people to look out for me. And then that year I went on to win like my first national titles at the under-17 age group. I became like the fastest 14-year-old of all time in Europe, all of these sort of things. And by the time I was 16, I'd signed a shoe deal with Nike at the time, a fairly large sponsor. And then obviously I went on to win the World Youths, World Juniors. I was European under-23 champion. I'd been to the Olympics, and I became, then I was the first British athlete to win a medal through juniors, under-18, under-20, under-23, and senior when I got a relay bronze medal. I anchored the team in 2009. So I was the first British athlete to do that. So yeah, it just sort of one thing to the other, but none of it was straightforward. Like I said, it was a lot of it. I had some injuries, stress fractures, hamstring tears, but I'd always got back to a certain level of being able to sprint at a world-class level.
And what is the plan going forward? How much longer what is the natural kind of career path for, in terms of how much longer can you be running for competitively? And have you got other things on the horizon that you're thinking about doing?
I would like to sort of transition into a bit of TV. But then equally, I quite like helping people. I do like helping people achieve their goals. I don't know in what capacity that would be, whether that be from a fitness perspective, because there's more people to help, and there can be a bit more consistency there in regards to the application of. But at the same time, in regards to time frame of sprinting, a lot of it is to do with injuries, and a lot of it's to do with your mindset and motivation. I'm still motivated and my body's still in one piece. I don't feel like I'm going backwards at any point. Last year, I ran my fastest time for a couple of years. So obviously things are still going well. And it's just about seeing, as long as I'm competing at a very high level, paying the bills and, you know, still living how I want to live, then yeah, I can see myself Birmingham 2022 is still in my mind's eye. Obviously now the Olympics next year, so I can see the next 3 years being quite a competitive sort of period in time. So who knows, I might go up until the next Olympics in Paris, I think it is. Yeah.
Cool. Closer to home too.
Yeah.
And hopefully no more viruses, which would be great.
Oh, fingers crossed. It's been a big struggle, that.
Yeah, I bet for the training. I can see that. I can see the TV stuff working out for you, Harry. You've got that kind of personality, and like what I was saying before about with Tim playing your stuff, it comes to you very naturally. And talking back to that idea of pressure and eyes on you, bringing out your best. That's a great marriage. You know, a great marriage of skill sets. So I would look forward to seeing that you hosting. Whatever the case is, maybe just some ideas. Maybe it's like a TV show about your favorite yoga teachers. That's just an idea. You can have that one. You're welcome.
I need to come and get involved. That's for sure.
Anytime you want, you're more than welcome. The sprinting stuff I've always been intrigued by, because it's such a, like you said, you guys work so hard for such a short amount of time for that race. It's 10 seconds,
Yeah.
you know. I spoke to a friend of mine who's a stunt guy who's also, he used to be the world #1 tumbler.
Oh, wow.
So on the long track, yeah. Incredible guy, Damian Walters. He does the most amazing kind of videos. He does extreme videos now, like backflips over Formula One cars. He did this ex-Dubai slide, like hanging on, no safety, and then did like a double back into the water. He just does, but he's so calm. So, you know, you're talking about different types of personality.
Yeah.
You talk to him and he's like, chill. But like, he's doing all this stuff that's like fucking crazy, you know, but he's very cool and chilled out. But he was explaining how when it will come to a meet, like you're saying, you only have that run. And what'll happen is you'll do a tumble and you'll feel that it's gone wrong a little bit. And you know that your feet aren't quite in the right place, but you just chuck it anyway. And he says, when you get to those meetings, people do the most ludicrous things, which everyone knows they're never going to land when they see them come out of the tumble. Like they see them out the roundoff. They're like, he's screwed that. He's done for. But it's, you know, they've been training for 4 years. They're like, hold on to their knees for dear life. And he said he landed once, like straight on his head, like on his face, and like bounced up, you know. And when you finish, you still have to present to the judges, even though you've like scorpioned on your face. So man, I kind of understand from speaking to him the same thing. You get to your race, you're like, I'm going to give it, no matter what goes on. I'm doing whatever I can. What's the feeling like afterwards, if you can just explain to us? Like, because you've built up for that moment, right? And then it's over.
Obviously, when you do well, it's a euphoric feeling, because obviously it's kind of annoying that you get ushered off the track. Obviously, unless it's a final and you're a medalist and you get to do a lap of honour or something. Those moments in itself speak totally different. You know, I mean, I'm jealous. I'm very envious of footballers who get to, you know, play in front of thousands of people week in, week out, score a goal, celebrates down the pitch. Whereas in our sport, it's a bit different in the sense that you gear up, you're so focused, gun goes, bang. Especially in the relay. The relay is one of the hardest things that you can sort of comprehend, because, you know, you're pretty much, I normally run either last leg or second leg. So, you know, you're upside down in a lane that's 1.2 meters wide. There's a piece of tape that's about 11 meters back. You've got 8 of the fastest men, you know, in the world running towards you. As you look back upside down, because you're looking underneath your armpit, you then got to anticipate or go on that mark when your teammate hits it. And then in a stadium, as well as 16 people at that exchange point, you've got to listen to your mate or teammate shout hand. And then when that person shouts hand, you have to throw back your hand, keep it still, and trust that they're going to be there whilst you've accelerated full pelt. And then the moment you feel the baton, you don't grasp, you don't grab for it, you take it. And then you've got to do the same thing and pass it on or cross the line. So when that's all done, it's a form of relief. You literally just go, thank, for that. And basically, and then obviously when you do well, it's just pure enjoyment. And that's where it is, you know, it's quite nice that, especially in the relay, you can go be competing against these guys all year round, and then you come together as a team and then celebrate together. And it does bring you closer, and there's more understanding behind it. But yeah, some of the best moments I've had has been part of the relay team. And the same as when you don't do as well. If there's a disappointing time where you feel like you could have done better, at least you've got each other to pull through. And you know, that's where Jen Savage, the psychologist, has come through for us, because she's helped us support each other. But individually, I remember, and it's all about enjoying micro victories, because there's a lot of things that we don't celebrate. And being British, we're very pessimistic at times. I find when we do well, but not as well as we'd like, or when we do well, it's like, I did all right. Like we're kind of
humble too.
Yes, we're scared to. Yes, we're scared to allow ourselves to show any form of enjoyment. We don't want to be called cocky. We don't want to be called X, Y, and Z. So we tend to just be like, it's all right. Even though you just won the lottery, I'm happy, but it's all right. Even though you've just done the best thing you possibly could do, it's all right. Whereas if you're American, you're screaming at the top of your lungs. Woo!
So I was just going to say to you, we have a joke in the stunt world where if you meet someone from America, you've got to take 20% off for VAT.
Yeah.
If you meet someone from the UK, you've got to add 20% on.
Yeah.
So if a guy from the UK goes, I'm okay, you're like, this guy's tasty. This guy's definitely good. An American guy says, I'm probably the best in the world. Bang average. Bang average. That's roughly the movement of the scale, you know?
Yeah.
But you're so right.
That's
I've noticed that being some from another country, you know, from Botswana, seeing that dichotomy of like, that's such a difference of skill level, but also how we present. But yeah, there's definitely a feeling in the UK of being like, stay in your lane, right? Don't get too...
Don't brag. Don't brag.
Yeah. Don't, but even, more than that,
even
just
if you win a
don't
race.
Yeah, exactly that.
Literally.
You see it in the media all the time. Like that poor football team cannot get it right. You know, no matter what they do, it's never enough. You know. So,
exactly. And it's and that's what I mean. So when you do cross the line, I feel like we should celebrate those micro victories more, whether it just be a PB. Some people can run a PB and then they're not happy. So you've just done the best performance you've ever done. And then people say, oh, you know, but this happened. You've just done the best thing you could ever possibly do. Don't get me wrong. If you felt that there's more in the tank, then go do it another day, but enjoy what you've just done because it may never happen again.
I mean, you're speaking to the mindful nature of what we're trying to look for, whether it be in yoga or the practice of yoga in our life, is this idea of, in fact, I think the evidence is that in your daily life, you have 3-to-1 ratio of pleasant things to unpleasant things happening. But how many times do you hear someone say, I had a terrible day? And then when you ask them what happened, a single thing happened. Everything else went well. They got to work on time. Everyone's safe in their family. They had a great meal. You know, they've got their friends. Everything's cool. But the boss was a bit nasty to them. And then we go, what a terrible day. We just lumped the whole day into that segment of bad. So I think you're totally right. You've got to take those limits, those small details, and savor them as much as you can. So it's great that you have that, because you are doing something that, I mean, in terms of the grand populace, less than, 0.01% will ever experience what you're going through there, you know? On that stage.
We are part of the small, you know, percentage of the world when you're talking about, you know, the world's fastest men and whatever else. But it's like you said, it's just, we only given one life, and life is sacred. And it's one of those things that is there for us to enjoy. So why not enjoy it? If you're saying that every day is a negative day, then change it. If you're saying that something is keeping you down, look as to why, because it's such a gift that we shouldn't let go too fast. I would definitely say that, you know, enjoy every day in the way that you can do.
And I think that is such great advice, especially considering what we're in now. It often takes something like this for us to go, man, it was really nice to go visit my friends. That was such a nice thing.
Yeah.
But when we had it, we have this terrible thing. I think it's called hedonistic adaptation. That as humans, no matter how good the thing is we have, whether it's a new car, a new house, a new girlfriend, after about 6 weeks, we tend to feel like it's normal every day. You don't walk outside and look at your car every time and go, damn, that thing is flying. You know, you just get used to it. It becomes base level. Yeah. So I think we've got to be vigilant in our own minds to go, maybe it's base level. It's still really good. So I think that's great advice. So Harry, where can people find you? What can they see more of? Are you doing online like training videos at all? Like, can people train along with you?
I'm actually doing a webinar next week, Wednesday at 4 p.m. There's a link on my YouTube, my Instagram to it. But in regards to the grand scheme of things, I'm not too sure how best to go about it. I've put out a few workouts that people can do at home. I'm trying to keep people up to tabs. I might try and update my content game a bit more, and maybe doing some more live interactive bits. I think I might do a live workout next Friday on Instagram. But yeah, I'm mainly based on Instagram, the handle being Aikines, AIKNES. But yeah, that's me. That's what I'm about.
Man, I can't wait to see it. I'm going to start practicing my box jumps like now to get this straight leg box jump.
The workout that I'm doing on Wednesday is actually a plyometric workout. So up your jumps.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good. What time Wednesday did you say?
4 p.m.
4 p.m. Wednesday. Sounds good, man. I'll be in for that. Harry, thank you so much for your time, bro. This is really appreciative to talk to someone obviously at the top of your game like this, and just to pick your brain about, you know, what it takes and your life so far. And it's been a real pleasure. I look forward to seeing you.
Mate, thank you so much. Yeah,
all right.
Soon come. Appreciate it, dude.
Cheers, buddy.